2, 3.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
There we go. But I think we unmute these two.
Courtney, they're saying yes, they can hear us.
Yes. It was the feedback from mine. The volume on mine was up.
It is a miracle.
Okay.
I think this is our first time.
Yeah.
Am I in the meeting? Can you see me?
We'll get this started by about
Oh, yeah,
7:30.
God, are we in an episode of The Office?
Raise your hand in the
In the app.
Here we go.
Ready for tomorrow.
It's our first Zoom.
All the teachers are watching saying, I am so happy that I'm going to do a better job tomorrow.
Yeah.
With students. Yeah, we're not going to do the airplay. I'm not. They can only.
Well, that's probably a setting thing locally. His microphone's popping because he's the one up.
Should we start over?
There we go.
We've already
We've done the pledge, we've done roll call,
and we're
and
ready.
and so just for the public at home, thank you for your patience. We are doing the tentative budget public hearing, and we will get to the regular meeting in a few minutes. At this time, we are to the tentative budget presentation. Mr. Blatchley.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So this evening is one of the requirements for us to go through the budget process. There will be a presentation. The one that I'm presenting tonight will be online tomorrow. It's for folks to follow and take a look at, as well as our budget form. It has to be posted as well. And so that will also be online if you'd like to follow along.
Dave, try unmuting, please.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
How's that? Is that any better?
Just keep going.
Okay. Tim, do I have, oh, perfect. Okay. So obviously the budget process is part communication for us. It's communication to the public. It's communication to the administration. As you can see, there are various things that we want to get across. I'll cover overview quickly, fund summary, some key assumptions that I'm taking into consideration for the budget. And like I said, the ISB form that I have to, that we have to get approved is on here, but I will not spend tonight going through that. If we just skip to the next slide, just some overview pieces that I'm obviously paying attention to: property tax caps, our CPI, which is just still very low for us, reductions in state funding, the possible pension shift that's always out there, a potential property tax freeze, just the COVID-19 and the variants. So these are all factors that I'm taking into consideration. And these were aspects of last year's budget that also impacted us. And so these are just some of the obstacles that we face as we're looking long term. On the next slide, then, we'll cover just some budget highlights. So next month, then, in September, I'll be bringing forward to the board a recommendation to adopt a budget that's made up of a little over 28 million in revenues, a little over 26 million then in expenditures. Built within this budget then is an idea for 21st century learning, and that's the adoption of Chromebooks at the junior high level. And right now we're at the 6th grade level, but we're looking to continue those changes. A little bit of an update then on the budget in terms of what it means for salaries and benefits. The two things that I've talked to the board quite a bit about, which is the minimum wage, so that's a component of the budget, as well as the various unemployment claims that we still are receiving that are ongoing. All this sort of comes together then as we talk about our district financial profile score. So managing that for the last several years, we've been 4.0. That's from ISB. That indicates the highest distinction that we can receive from the Illinois State Board of Education. Means financial recognition for us. So on the next slide then, there are some fund summaries that I've got for revenue. I'm not really going to spend much time on this just because this is a quick hearing for us. But this is a 5-year snapshot for us in terms of revenue. On the next chart, you'll see also revenue as well. The slight dip down in 2020 was our budget to actual, where we had budgeted more than what we actually ended up bringing in revenue. Some of those cases were because of state funding, as well as the corporate personal property replacement tax, and just some other local funding that we saw. So we've done some things internally to change the way that, like with student fees and other things. So some of that impacted revenue. Expenses on the next chart, you can see that it's the ed fund, operations and maintenance, debt service. You kind of get that 5-year historical view for us. And obviously the biggest expense for us is the education fund. On the next slide is a little bit of a different perspective of expenses, and this is salaries, benefits, purchase services, those kinds of things make up the biggest bulk of what we're spending our money on. On the next slide, then, it just talks a little bit about the view of expenses, budget to actual. You can see there, it's always better to spend less than you're bringing in, so we're doing that very well. On the next slide, this is just a snapshot from this past year of where we ended the year with the fund balance as we're moving into FY22. It's hard to see on the slide, but if you look at the second to last column on the right, there you can see the starting balance. And so that's what we're starting out with for FY22. Reason to highlight that, for this meeting really is, the key thing is, we receive taxes and we receive revenue 2 times a year. And so at various times, we look like we have a larger balance than what maybe we would at other times. So this money is one of 2 different installments that we get for property tax payments. And that has to last us the year. So even though right now it might look like, wow, fund balance wise, you're sitting on $10 million, yes, but that has to get us through the entire year. So that and one more payment that we get. So that's why, as of July 1, it looks a little different. The next 2 slides really just cover, it's a fun summary sort of analysis. I don't really want to spend time going through that. And then just some key assumptions. Obviously, as I sort of started out with, these are the things that I'm thinking about as I'm building the budget. Happy to answer any questions. But these are the big things that, there's lots of uncertainties in the budget, and we're doing our best to manage. One of the things that is on here that I didn't talk about earlier was interest earnings. And so with, unusually low rates in the market, making the most that we can off of our investments is critical. And so I think that's going to be a focus for this coming year with myself and PMA, our financial firm, just to make sure that we're earning as much as we can on the investment front. So like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions. This last slide just highlights a little bit of the fiscal year process, sort of how we go through it. Don't really need to spend much time on that. I'll stop and answer any questions at this time.
Dave, do we foresee any type of drastic increase in the busing cost for the year, or is that pretty stable compared to
It's been pretty stable with our contract. We did see a fairly large increase 2 years ago when we first went to first student. And that was a little bit of a front-loaded contract, I think, for us. But it has stabilized, and I would hopefully venture to say we'll still be seeing that this year. The challenge we had last year was we still had to maintain payments to first students. So we had an agreement with them that we paid a portion of the contract, even though for most of the year we were remote. But I would think in terms of their costs, what I'm hearing from them is they are still having the same kinds of pressures for finding drivers, dealing with the price of fuel. So we have a little bit of the fuel cost that comes to us. But I think most of the contract is stabilized.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. I need a motion to adjourn the public hearing tentative budget.
I'll make it.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Ayes have it. All right, so we are on to the next part. I think everybody needs to unmute when they're talking
And I think we can unmute safely right now.
Without getting feedback and stuff. So if people want to do that, I think we're okay. I'm sure we'll see in the chat if we're causing trouble.
And I don't have Adriana.
Oh.
Elevated.
Okay.
Panelist.
Can you raise your hand on the?
Do you want us unmuted?
I think it's safe. I don't think we're getting feedback.
Unless we're talking, you don't need us unmuted.
I
I don't need you unmuted unless you're talking.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right,
All right, now I'm calling to order
our
our
regular meeting of,
Public hearing on the e-learning.
11.
Yeah, 2 public hearings.
I
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that one. I have these two twice. I don't have the e-learning one.
This you have 2 budgets.
yeah,
Okay.
that's okay.
That's okay.
I think
I can do this without it.
Okay,
Okay.
e-learning,
E-learning.
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
All right,
now
now we're moving into the public, the public hearing for our e-learning plan. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 here. We did the pledge. Any public comments on the e-learning? No. Okay.
Okay.
Dr.
Dr.
Arnold.
Arnold.
So we have Ms. McCluskey will be presenting our e-learning plan, and I will be sharing it as soon as I can pull it up. Okay. All yours.
All right. Tonight, I'm going to present to you the e-learning plan for D92. As you probably know from past history, back in 2015, ISB piloted e-learning with 3 districts in Illinois. And after that, it became into effect in Public Act. And that's what we're doing tonight, presenting it to the board to get that adoption voted on tonight. The e-learning days are in place of emergency days. And they do not extend the school year, and we have to make sure that the calendar is in alignment with that. Also, the plan needs to be approved by the Regional Office of Education, and it's a 3-year term.
Can I mention that last line?
And this is not a remote learning plan. We keep talking about that. A lot of people are getting confused between the difference. And just to verify, it was in place before we entered the pandemic and COVID-19. So the purpose of the D92 e-learning plan is to provide flexibility in the learning environment and ensuring the continuum of learning and engagement without adding emergency days to the end of the school year. E-learning is going to be utilized if we have inclement weather like blizzards, tornadoes, if there is a pipe burst, something like that. So we don't have to extend the school year and make up those days at the end of the year. The union was in collaboration with us in planning this, and it aligns to our mission statement, empowering each student to develop a love of learning in an evolving global society. All right, so the requirement is the teachers provide 5 hours of instructions for students in grades K-8, and in our early childhood classes, it'd be 2.5 hours of instruction since they have a shortened day. Teachers will provide materials by 8 a.m. that morning. They will post materials on our learning platforms. It could be a digital assignment. It could be a book they have at home, whatever's going on in the classroom. So it's nothing different. It's a continuation, so we don't have to make up those days at the end of the year. Attendance will be taken to Power School, just like the normal means, just like we would every day, if that is all possible. Students with special needs will have accommodations modified according to their IEP, and electives and specialist classes will be provided as necessary. And teachers will be available through email from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. to provide those services for students. In our district, we're very fortunate that all teachers and students have assigned devices, and we have been very familiar with our platforms, Seesaw and Google Classroom, so it won't be new to our students and to our teachers. And we keep updating our technology and our training for everybody as we go along. communication regarding the e-learning will be as soon as possible, via email or the district website as soon as possible. And every year we will review the plan and make those adjustments as necessary after evaluating if it's successful and what we need to do to improve it. So we're asking tonight for the board to approve the plan so we could go forward with that. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
I actually have a rather important question.
Sure.
We, in our statement, we've got that the teaching staff will have the lessons, loaded by 8 a.m. Do we have a cutoff then the day before when they're going to be notified that we're going to have an e-learning day so that, it doesn't pop up? I mean, unusual circumstance, a water main break happens at 4 a.m. You're not going to have the opportunity, but, weather and otherwise, I don't want these guys to be having to jump up at 4 a.m. and try and throw their lesson plans together.
Sure.
Is there an actual cutoff time that we've got set up for them?
So we don't want that scenario either. So when I was a kid, you'd wake up and listen to the radio and find out that morning. And it was unheard of to call it the day before, the night before. I can't remember the last time, it was years ago, that we called school due to weather-related incidences, anything but the night before. I mean, so we've got a pretty strong pattern. Our parents expect that to a large extent, which makes it dicey calling it the night before, but I can't remember the last time we called it the morning of. So we've made the commitment with the union and working with them that under any situation where we can foresee, we want to let people know by noon the day before, hey, start thinking about tomorrow. Weather looks a little dicey. Have kids take some extra books home, some extra supplies. We want the students to leave the day before with something. And if everything's fine and we have school, they just bring them back. But we don't want to put people in a scramble. The only thing would be those unforeseen things that something crazy happened with the weather that none of us saw coming, or probably even more likely, a water main break, things like that, where it's just one building that needs to do that. They don't have water that day. So that's the kind of thing that could happen in the middle of the night that could be a last minute decision, but would not affect the whole district. But our goal is we don't have a set cutoff like you're asking for, Jim, but we are fully committed to making those, at least signaling the possibility well in advance.
Okay, thank you.
So Tim, we could use this, or Jamie, we could use this on a per building basis. This doesn't have to be district wide, so we can run schools out so they go to an e-learning mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I understand this, but maybe just to add clarity in case anybody has questions from the chat session, is this is not a synchronous Zoom type thing. This is more of an asynchronous. Here's your digital materials, or here's whatever materials you should be using. Go work on that and let us know how you did. This is not sitting on a Zoom call all day.
So,
or could it be?
So it probably wouldn't be. It by definition, it needs to be 5 hours of instruction, but like we know from remote learning, in no way, shape, or form is that intended to mean a student sitting looking at a screen for 5 hours. What we would recommend is that a teacher get an assignment. Some of it could be synchronous. It could all be asynchronous. It's really up to the teacher to design that. But we will work with the teachers. We never envisioned that to be 5 hours of staring at a screen.
Gotcha.
And then, Tim, so we wouldn't have any snow days, like.
This would be in place.
Right, but I mean, so we wouldn't have a typical.
Correct.
Take a day off in plain.
Right. And that's the benefit I think the teachers are seeing that, and probably parents too, from a planning standpoint. By using these, we don't extend the school year. So when we say the last day of school is whatever it is, it should stay that way. Because once you get past 5 in Illinois, then you're in your active odd days, and those don't add on to the end of the year. So if by some weather-related reason or otherwise, we used 5 learning days, then we would be in the active odd day, which wouldn't add on to the end of the school year.
So maybe just to play out a scenario based building on that. I know this is pretty unlikely. I don't think it's ever happened. But if we had a fairly large power outage in Lockport, kids aren't going to have internet. They're not going to have power. We're not going to have power. Teachers might have power. really kind of hard to do the e-learning.
Yep.
Do you still have it within the building, within the district authority to issue an emergency day, no school, we tack one on, or does this completely replace?
Well, no, I think that's something we want to walk carefully because we worked with the union to create this plan to use these.
Right.
And there's ways around that. You could have non-electronic activities for that day. But yes, I haven't played that scenario out, but to my knowledge, there's nothing prohibiting us from canceling everything, doing no learning, and then adding that day onto the end.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was
You
getting at.
you don't give up that ability with this.
That's what I was getting. Okay, good, thanks.
But we wouldn't use it unless it was the most unusual situation.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
All right.
This is still the public hearing.
Yeah.
So
So I need a motion to adjourn
this public hearing on the e-learning plan.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Ayes
Ayes have it.
Okay,
Okay,
now
now
let's try to move to our regular agenda. What's
What's the record for the number of meetings or public hearings in a single day?
I bet we could do three.
All right.
All right.
So now I'm calling to order our regular school board meeting of August 17th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here?
Here. We've done the pledge. Any additions to the agenda? All right, hearing none. Recognitions and celebrations?
We do have one from North Skentos has one.
Hi, good evening. We actually were fortunate enough to be contacted by the Women of the Moose, the Lockport Moose here down on 10th Street. In July, they were looking to do some community outreach and wanted to contact local school districts, and they wanted to make sure it was districts that were in Lockport. So Colleen Omeyer reached out to us and was able to start a school supply drive specifically for our students. So she took the supply list from all 4 schools, put it out to their participants, and brought a table full of supplies to us, plus $100 that we can give to families in need. So social workers and I worked together, identified those families, and most already have a backpack full of things to start tomorrow. A few that couldn't pick up, we'll have them in their locker when they get here. So it's confidential, no one knows who's getting them. And we're excited to be able to help those families. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
I think one more worth noting is just that we had our opening institute this morning. It went off great. It was so incredible to see everybody in person as opposed to last year. And we recognized our retirees at the beginning of the year, just to call them out a little bit. All of our new staff, new to D92, as well as a lot of recognition for our office staff and our maintenance and custodial staff who worked tremendously hard this summer to get us all up and ready. The schools look great. We're ready to go for kids tomorrow.
Excellent, okay. AFT report.
As I tip the chair, are we? Good evening. Thank you. We actually voted today for the contract and it was passed. It was ratified. So that's good news. We can look forward to re-examining this in the next couple of years. A nice break is needed. It was nice to see everybody at the opening of the school, and we are ready and waiting for the children to come back tomorrow.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks.
All right, no public comments on items on the agenda? Okay, administrative reports. Dr. Arnold.
I'm going to go through, this is a follow-up to our August 3rd meeting when we talked about metrics, and the board asked that we come back and revisit this at tonight's meeting. So there are several slides in here that are the same. So I'm only going to point out, oh, is it not showing?
You're not sharing it.
Oh. Let's try this.
There we go. Well, there we go.
Okay, so the slides that are unchanged, I'll just note and move on, but happy to talk about anything here. There's really only 3 or 4 slides that are the main topic. The only thing that's different here is after our meeting on August 3rd, Governor Pritzker implemented a statewide mask mandate the next day. This is the same slide that talks about how we look at metrics. This is our review of last year. No changes on this slide about how we're focused on community-based metrics. Same mitigation strategies that we outlined before. This is the next, the next three slides are the detail that the board was asking for. So these are submitted for your consideration. It's not an action item. If you tell me to go forward with this, I'm going to go forward with it. If you make suggestions for changes, we'll implement that. We are looking at 5 metrics to use, and think of it this way. Of the 5, the way we design and determine which category we're in, low, moderate, or high, is on the next slide. So right now, this is just defining the individual metrics. Looking at the first line is our D92 metrics that involve our zip codes, these drive from our zip codes. And that is the rolling 7-day average of the positivity rate for students and staff. That's actually not a zip code, that's in our classrooms, in our schools. The next one is a zip code one, same number, but for our zip code. The next one is the new case rate for our 2 zip codes, the vaccination rate for the zip codes, and that comes from Will County Health Department. They do have the data linked to GIS, but it's not good enough yet. We participated in a meeting. They've done a tremendous amount of work for that, but we don't have that vaccination rate by zip code yet, but they're close. It's pretty good progress. And then once we get shield testing up and running, and as a note, we did meet with them again today for a walkthrough. We are looking to implement that not beginning next week, but the following week. So we are tentatively looking at the week of Tuesday, August 31st through Friday, September 3rd being our first testing. And it would be, the plan is for 1 school per day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every week. We'll get into that later. But we won't have that number until we get up and running. So the percentages that are submitted here, if it's in, you can see, read for yourself. We've taken those from CDC and combined them into the different targets. Any questions on how each line could be a different color? And so I'm going to show you on the next slide how we get a summative.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So these are easy, straightforward. Anybody can look at this and the metrics will be very transparent. There we go. So this one tells us, based on what the previous slide had, let's take low risk, for example. We are blue if no more than 2 indicators are in moderate and nothing is in high. So let me go back to this slide. Looking at the low column and look at the moderate column, we can have no more than 2 in the moderate and no highs. And then on this slide, we would be low risk. We would be blue. So there's some gray, right? The gray would be if there's 2 yellows on the previous slide, but everything else is blue, then we'd be blue. If it was 1 yellow, rest blue, same thing, all blue, same thing. And then you look at that column and say, this is how we're running school for the next 2 weeks. Remember, this is a 2-week review, and we would be announcing on Wednesdays, for example, what the next 2 weeks would look like beginning the following Monday. So we announce on Wednesday, we analyze on Wednesday, announce on Wednesday what things will look like beginning the following Monday. So if we're in moderate or yellow, that means that no more than 2 are in the high risk category. If 3 or more are high risk on this slide, then we're not moderate, we're not low. And then obviously 3 or more in the high risk, we're in high risk. There's no science behind it, it's logic. I just tried to find a logical way to give some grace that 1 or 2 indicators could be elevated, but we don't have to jump up until 3 are. And it's similar to the way we look at our evaluation process and things like that, kind of the preponderance of evidence approach. Happy to take any questions, but let me show you also how this would look today. Now you notice a lot of gray because we just don't have data. We aren't in session yet. So remember, this chart had several more indicators from several more sources last year. It's really cleaned up and tightened up. This is what people would look at, and it would be transparent. And so we would look at every week, even though we review it every 2 weeks, we would be giving this out every week. As far as if this was this week, we look at last week's positivity rate for students and staff. We're not in school, so that's why it's a gray. We can tell you that as of today, our D92 community positivity rate, that's our zip code, is at 6.49. Okay, it's in the yellow, and you could click on that link and look that up for yourself. Same thing with the new cases per 100,000. That is in the substantial, that is 124. Okay, once again, you can click on that link and look for yourself. As I said earlier, the shield testing rate is not, we don't have that yet. We haven't started that. And you looked at the first target date to get data on that would be where we're at August 31st to September 3rd. And then the vaccination rate, I don't have control over how soon we get that, but I think we'll get it within a month or, well, I don't want to make a prediction. When you look at those colors above this, that's how you would get where it says mitigation status for August 17th to September 8th. If we were doing this in this rolling way, then that color would be the color that drives how we're learning, blue, yellow, or red. Below, I just thought there were some more pieces that we had tracked previously that I wasn't really wanting to drop off. I think it's going to be important to continue to track any outbreaks. We're not making decisions about our model on those, but I think it's important to be transparent with everyone about that. If we have cases with transmission connected back to D92, we want to still track that. That's another one we were tracking last year. And then some others, these are county metrics from IDPH. I think it's worth still monitoring the youth cases and the new cases per 100,000. We could add something like positivity there if we wanted to. Just for note, those are currently in the substantial range. But the ones that matter are at the top of this chart. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does the fact that we don't have the vaccination rate data, and we don't know exactly when we're going to get it, does that change the equation at all? I mean, what do we treat gray? Is gray treated as red? Is it treated as blue?
So
does it factor in at all?
Several questions. The question, does it affect the equation? Yes, because now you're not looking at 5 factors, you're looking at 4, but it doesn't change the chart. That's what's so super slick about this chart I created, is that if you look at the definitions, all of it still works, even if we never have the vaccination rate data. So when you look at this, it just says for low risk, no more than 2 in moderate. Well, obviously, if we don't have any data, it's not in moderate, it's not in high. Same applies for the other 2. So that won't help, it won't hurt us. It would be nice to have a 5th data point. We really would like, but I don't have any control over that.
And just to be clear, none of this matters right now, right?
To be very clear, none of it matters. I think that might be somewhere in the presentation that as long as we are, I think I might have had a slide. Positivity rates are there. This slide, as of the 4th, until that's lifted, we have the mask mandate in place. Once it's lifted, if we have permission, we will start using this process. But yes, this process is really put on a shelf until that changes from the state mandate. Good question. This is just this isn't the most recent. These are a couple days old there, and this is really just a quick picture of what's happened since we used this slide, I think, for the August 3rd presentation. And if you look at this, each one of these cells every week is getting worse up through the most current data on the IDPH website as of today. This is the most recent data. So we want to see that trend turn around. We do want to continue to encourage vaccinations. We want to encourage, obviously, the mask wearing. We are looking to have sometime in September, at least one, we're going to continue partnership with vaccination sites. And so as those become available, the state of Illinois is really asking that schools participate in that. So we'll follow the same structure. Obviously, that's optional only if you're within the age range that it applies, but we will keep providing those. It's our intent to continue to do that as long as it's asked of us. That's it. Everything else is the same from our previous presentation. Okay.
Any other?
So that's my board report. We do normally at the August board meeting report out on our annual goals, things like that. We've, for obvious reasons, taken that and we're going to shift all of that conversation to our September 21st board meeting. And I think the rest of the reports in the board book are for your information. If there's any questions anyone has, I think the rest of the admin team is happy to answer.
Tim, do you need our approval on those metrics, or were you looking?
Well, as long as you're okay with them, we're going to, our intent is to implement them when we can.
Are we gonna monitor, do the?
So we're still gonna track everything. And kind of to Grant's point, I'll make sure we put a disclaimer on there to qualify. Maybe we even leave that line blank as far as which zone we're in, low, medium, or high, because it doesn't matter right now. Well, it actually does matter because it does affect some of the other activities, social distancing, things like that. So we will continue to monitor it, but I think we need to get the school year started and see how it's going. But the board does have a right, as early as September 24th, if we need to adjust these, we can always just let me know. We can bring them back and look at them again.
I do have one question about that chart. Does the number of students that have opted out of the Shield saliva test impact that chart and those numbers?
Yep, that's that Shield testing line. So I won't know that data point until the week of August 31st. I can tell you that we sent out the information originally. I sent another blast out today reminding just about first day of school, but also offering the opt-out form. We will do that one more time before we actually start the testing the week of the 31st. So we'll send something out again saying, hey, parents, we're going to start the saliva testing on this day for your child in the school. Here's the opt-out form should you want to submit it. My count yesterday was we were at 110 yesterday out of over 1,400 students, but we still have some coming in. So we would expect that 110 number to increase, but still happy with the percentage that we're getting to be tested.
Okay. So I guess my other question would be, so when the mask mandate is lifted, whenever, if it's lifted this year at all, would that number, if that number increased where people opted out when we were still with these numbers, would that impact those zones?
It would. Let me pull that chart back up.
Like if we had a lot of kids not getting tested, if they were in the red in those students, I'm making sure I'm asking it right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Just trying to get there. Okay. Let me share this. Okay. Too much on my desktop. This is the slide that you're referring to. So that last line shows saliva testing rate. If it's 40% or if it's greater than 40%, we consider that to be a low, if we rated that way. If we slip down to less than 40%, but 25% or more, we'd be in the moderate, and then high risk would be if we have less than 25% being tested.
Gotcha. Okay. That's the clarity I was looking for. Okay.
So what the board didn't have back on August 3rd was this chart, the metrics that are specific to it. We talked about what we would use, but not what would tip us one way or the other, and how that would create a summative, which lane we're in, kind of thing. And so this chart, though, until we get the testing up and running, that will stay gray.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Just like the vaccination rate will stay gray until we start getting that data in.
Okay.
Just to clarify the vaccination rate we are shooting for, I had asked IDPH, I'd asked around for, can you tell me if we're using metrics like this, what numbers we should put in low or moderate or high for vaccination rates? There isn't any science around it telling schools what to do for that. And so this is the best recommendation I can get, that if you're 50% or more, that's good. And so we try to kind of break it up between there. Wait, that's the wrong line. No, the vaccination rates, we don't have those recommendations yet. I misspoke. So they haven't given us what low, medium, and high are. I'm sorry, I misspoke. We're waiting for that. There's just no science behind that. So it's going to be something where they say, you know, they haven't color coded that data point at their level, so I don't have anything to go on. Apologize for that.
All right.
And yes, unless there's any questions about memos for administrators, that's it.
All right. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I can make it.
I'll second.
All right.
Can I make that one note for correction for the law firm?
Yes.
Okay, so on number 7 for legal firms, there's one is incorrect. It should read Hines, Petrarca, Fester. So that's the only change. And there's no legal requirement. We do this for transparency. So I just wanted to alert the board to that firm.
The firm didn't change, the name changed.
Name changed, yeah. Still, we still work with the same individuals, but the firm's name did change.
Okay. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. All right, I need approval. I need a motion to approve the Lamont Refinery Real Estate Property Tax Settlement Agreement.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Any questions? We've been waiting. It's exactly what,
Finally done.
yeah, it's exactly what we had all, we talked about. Okay. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the e-learning plan for 2021 and the 2022 school year.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Any further questions from the presentation? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the AFT Local 604 as presented.
I'll make it.
I'll second. Any questions? Any? Okay. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. Very good. Board discussion items. Do we need we don't have a second.
It's another time if the board has.
Had any other questions about the budget? Okay.
Tentative budget for the new board members. It's a tentative budget that'll be presented, so it'll be posted for 30 days, and then you'll be asked to approve it at the September board meeting.
And the separate meeting is a legal requirement that's been in there forever. Yeah, so just presenting it in a regular board meeting isn't good enough, for whatever reason. And then any further discussion on the metrics for levels and mitigation strategies? Okay. All right, there's no old business, any new business? Okay. FOIA items were in the board packet and communications. Did we have,
No.
no, okay. It's 2? It's not 11? Grievances in there?
I think so. It's 1.
Okay. Okay. We don't have any public comments on non-agenda items. All right. Then I need a motion to go into closed session. The board may enter closed session for the purpose of 5 ILS 122C, subsections 1 and or 11. Oh. Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, we are in closed session.